Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hermitage. I hope you are enjoying this lovely November day. A little chilly, some rain. But we're going to warm you up with a song called Be Free Inside, which I like to call I'll Tell the World, by the Ananda Farm Family Singers.
I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this: don't beg from anyone, just live in joy. Be free inside. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this: don't beg from anyone, just live in joy. Be free inside. I'll tell the world I don't have money, but life is wonderful and every day is sunny. The trick is this: don't beg from anyone, just live in joy. Be free inside. Woo.
Next we have New Dawn.
Okay, hot seat. Here we come. Did you warm it up for us?
Welcome everyone once again. We had a break last week, but here we are. So let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, beloved God,
Friend, beloved God,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashai,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Sri Yukteswar,
beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yoganandaji,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Saints of East and West,
Saints of East and West,
Friend and Guide Swami Kriyananda,
Friend and Guide Swami Kriyananda,
join us in this satsang,
join us in this satsang,
infusing our feelings with thy unconditional love,
infusing our feelings with thy unconditional love,
opening our minds to your wisdom,
opening our minds to your wisdom,
and our hands to your friendship.
and our hands to your friendship.
Om. Peace. Amen. Well, where to start? I think pregnancy agrees with you, Ben. You're glowing already.
Yeah, especially when you play music.
That too.
So Sita came with a few questions.
Oh, is that? Oh, troublemaker that she is.
Why don't you do the honors?
So you've been taking a seclusion, right? Okay. What did Master mean when he said seclusion is the price of greatness? Padma, what did he mean?
Wait a minute, I thought by having you read the question.
Well, I read the question. Go ahead.
Well, he didn't explain what he meant.
True.
So it's a question of interpretation. And I have to confess, I was first introduced to seclusion when our children were really young. Actually, we took seclusion before that even, but especially when our children were young, I could never understand this statement that seclusion is the price of greatness, because that makes it sound like a sacrifice, and it was like seclusion was so awesome. Especially when you were around two young toddlers all the time, you know. Having that silence, drinking in that silence was blissful. But we do have to be alone with our own thoughts, with our own heart, with our own mind, when we're in seclusion. And for a lot of people, that can be very challenging, especially if they're not accustomed to watching their own, thoughts, or trying to still those thoughts. The hard work, seclusion is hard work for us spiritually, at least it is for me, to be able to try to meditate long hours and really honestly try to do that and keep the heart and mind focused on God as much as is all possible. That takes a great deal of energy, concentration, and on the one hand it may seem exhausting, but on the other hand, when you put out the effort and you do it, you feel so much more refreshed than any vacation could ever have you feel, because there is absolute soul rest, you might say, in that stillness. So that's my interpretation of it.
A couple of weekends ago, Sundays ago, we had a gathering outside in the garden behind the Blue Lotus Temple. I don't remember who all among you, yeah. And really it was one of the most, in fact, the most heartfelt sharing that I think I'd experienced in nearly 30 years of being here in Seattle. But one comment was appropriate to this subject. Somebody said that, once the sheltering in place was there and couldn't run around and go here and go there, that he found that actually having the time to meditate was more of a challenge than he expected, considering himself a good and strong meditator, generally speaking, but that the busyness of doing things intruded on what really was available extra time for his sadhana. And you find you have to face yourself in a seclusion where you shouldn't start with a week if it's new to you, but we try to do a week, and now after all these years we'd like to have more than a week. But in any case, whatever it is, when you sit down on that first day and it's just you and you, hopefully, it's a moment of reckoning, because there's nothing else you're there to do. And maybe the first day you're full of vim and vigor, perhaps, but you really meet yourself in seclusion, and the price is the effort that it takes to come on back, come on, sit down, focus, do what you need to do. You have to work at it. Whenever I come out, I say, some people ask, naturally, how was your seclusion? I said, it was hard work, but it was good work. Bringing the mind constantly back, you think, oh, gee, maybe I should soak those beans, or, amazing, all the things you suddenly have to do, that, oh, I should clean that carpet, or whatever, because it's really a confrontation with yourself. It's a very, I like to consider it a very existential experience, because there's nobody else there, and you pray to Divine Mother, but all those little demons eat away at your peace of mind, and you really have the opportunity to face yourself and see what you're made of. So that's the price. But the greatness is what comes from it. Every seclusion I've taken, it's like you've been cleansed and purified the hard way, through fire, through the fire of your concentration, through the fire of your devotion, through the fire of your willpower, etc. But you come out cleansed in light. And that greatness is that sense of the greatness of who you are, of just, I'm non-attached, I'm free, I'm willing, you sort of rejuvenate. When Padma said better than a vacation, that's really how I've felt. Most vacations I come back needing a vacation, and I hear other people saying the same thing. Travel can be exhausting. If you're with kids, it's just a bummer, and etc. So
I hope your kids aren't watching this.
But in seclusion, you really do get a deep spiritual rest. Now, vacations are fun. Vacations are also necessary. But you really have a sense of yes when you come out. That sense of you're confident, you're solid, you're centered, you've been spiritually rejuvenated. But there is a price.
And then there's measuring how long it takes after you get back from seclusion before you get impatient, you get upset with somebody, you get upset with yourself.
Yeah, you come out, at least I have, just high as a kite. And I can think of one time coming back and just the stuff hit the fan. Something was happening in the community. It was pretty serious, actually. But I just lost it. Because you just feel like you're so on top of it and you're so together. But yeah.
It's tested.
You get tested right away.
So she has 2 more questions about this.
No.
Swamiji led a very active life. Did he do much secluding?
That's for you.
That's for me?
Yeah.
He did actually.
Mm-hmm.
He liked taking longer seclusions. He worked very, very hard for long periods of time. But then he would take a month or even longer sometimes. Or sometimes he would take writing seclusions. So that's not like a meditating seclusion, but it's, no interactions, no conversations, no business before email, none of that kind of thing, but just to focus in on a particular book he was working on, or music he was composing. But yes, the answer is yes. He knew how to work hard and play hard and meditate long. Yeah. He had a very good balance between work and relaxation. It didn't take a lot of relaxation to rejuvenate him for the next phase of work, but he was good at knowing when to stop, and which wasn't that much for him. He stayed pretty refreshed through most of his work. God comes through, you don't need quite as much. Do you have any?
Well, it got harder as in
Yeah.
the latter years of his life. He had difficulty meditating with heart problems and things. So the kind of seclusion that we think of where you really spend, well, like we do, you call it a week, whatever the time it is, you really spend a lot of it just focused in meditation and chanting and spiritual reading and so on, became harder for him in the latter years. But what you just said just reminded me, when you were with him, he was so relaxed as a person, and yet what he did was very stressful, meaning you looked at his schedule and so forth, would be defined as stressful in the sense of busy, okay? And not just busy in a petty way, busy, giving lectures and doing things that took a lot of brain power and so on. But sitting at a meal, maybe there was a time in his life when he read a lot of whodunits, novels and stuff, and we'd go on trips and we'd share Dick Francis novels and, but the degree to which he could be in his body and in his mind relaxed in between the times when he was focusing energy on talking to somebody or whatever was really remarkable. I was talking with one of our teachers the other day about energization and reminding that from a physical standpoint, kind of, one should be able to, let's say tense a muscle or whatever it is, a body part, but the rest of your body should be totally relaxed. And we need to practice that. And so in yoga, what your muscles you're not using should be relaxed. But so should all of us during the day. What we're not using should be at rest. And that was something he was really good at. He might do a crossword puzzle from the New York Times or whatever. When he was younger, he used to like to do the crossword puzzle. But whatever part of his self was not being used was relaxed. That was an amazing thing about him. Chest up, just relaxed. Great example.
Yep.
Was there ever a time where he was on seclusion and something important came up for either of you that you felt you wanted to ask him but you couldn't because he was on seclusion, or was he always open to receive, even on seclusion, something that you felt was important?
I tried not to bother him, which is why it worked in my relationship with him. So I didn't impose even when he wasn't in seclusion. I rarely asked him questions that I needed answers to. So that was just the relationship we had. It was very impersonal in that way. It was different with different people, but that was mine. So, yeah, no, I rarely would impose on him even when he was taking any questions people might have. So.
I think Asha's book might have had one instance where somebody, where he talked to somebody during the seclusion. I have a vague, dim recollection, but yeah.
Oh yeah, I remember that story. Was it the old retreat?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he was always there for people when it was really important. So, and sometimes he would intuit and he'd contact you when he sensed that you were really needing to talk to him about something that you were otherwise not wanting to disturb him about. So he tuned right in.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is. You know?
Sometimes with devastating efficiency.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You knew that?
No, really, it was, he used to tell in his New Path book, which Hriman brought out here, he used to talk about people around Yogananda, and Yogananda would say, I know every thought you're thinking. And woo, But that was the experience that we had with him. Sometimes it was conscious, sometimes it was not on our part. But when it was scary. It was like, wait a minute. We never talked to anybody about that. But there it was.
He was big on making phone calls, and how many times was something going on and the phone rang? It's just endlessly he would call right in the middle of some conversation we might be having, or something up in the community and so forth. So he just sort of got used to that. Yeah. I don't know how it worked, but it did work. So advice for starting out, Padma, what would you say?
Any counsel for the novice secluder, or for those among us who make terrible hermits? Well, it's always good to bring a couple of inspiring books on our path into seclusion with you that's what I would do to try to inspire myself to want to meditate more, by reading inspirational things. Reading is sort of cheating because it's another way of talking. The mind is still engaged. But it's still not engaged, on ourselves, and it's not engaged on our own feelings or our own thoughts, and it's trying to bring us to a calmer place. So I always found that helpful in my earlier seclusions. Later on, reading gets in the way for me now in seclusion because, the time is so precious. You want to spend it chanting and meditating and being more reflective. But it's definitely a really good way to get the heart, and mind engaged in the right way. Reading about the direct disciples, or reading about, parts of the teachings that you don't normally get back to that quickly. Or your favorite, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, or the New Path, or the autobiography. I probably had that as the centerpiece of my seclusion many a time through the years. So I don't know if that helps. How about you?
I think the biggest mistake to make when you're starting your seclusion career is to fall into autism, which is I ought to be doing this, I ought to be doing that. And very much like the advice Swami gave us at the 8-hour meditation, which is to tune into the flow of energy in the body, focus, and when that wanes, then just sort of be with it, etc. I won't go into all that, but in seclusion, the autism creates a lot of tension. I ought to be meditating for 8 hours or whatever it is. And I've had seclusions, a number of them, where I was so exhausted going into seclusion because of work that it took a day, I won't say 3 days, but maybe 2 days of basically sleeping before I could meditate with any real attentiveness and devotion. So I say if the bird and the book disagree, believe the bird and go with the natural flow of what you feel like. Maybe it's a contrast with what Padma just said, but I found in my early years, I don't do it now, but I would journal. I would use the time to be introspective and, be willing to face things that were coming up and to journal about them. I never read them afterwards, but I happen to be one of those people who find inspiration and clarity by writing, handwriting,
That's
the
not in
old-fashioned.
conflict.
So,
It's natural.
I think you need to do what comes natural, but then try to be attentive to the borderline when you're just being busy because you're afraid to meet yourself. You're afraid to sit there, close the eyes, and see who really lives there, So if you're self-honest and you can, gets back to relaxation, then, you can make a meal. Padma and I suspect many people really try to damp down the food business, because that can be a distraction. But on the other hand, I'm obviously not a cook, so why would I think about food? But you could prepare a lovely meal with devotion, chant. In other words, there isn't anything you can't really do in seclusion if it comes from your center and your heart, as long as that is the focus of what you're doing. So try to avoid the, whipping yourself into, into a pretzel pose for 8 hours or something like that. I think that's the biggest mistake, is feeling what I ought to be doing. Does that make sense?
I was mentioning about when our children were young and the house was noisy most of the time. I so craved silence that I'd go into seclusion and I didn't even want to hear any sound, not one. A lot of people go into seclusion and they'll bring some talks by Swami, some talks by Master Yogananda. And now I like to do a little bit of that also, like while I'm eating or something like that. But back then, I didn't want anything. No sound, period. No audio whatsoever. And this is before video, so that even wasn't an issue. But those things can also be helpful to get your inspiration up for some people.
In my early years, I didn't care about sound, but I was paranoid of seeing anybody. I didn't want to see anybody. So I'd go to great lengths to make sure nobody was within visible range. And again, like that, I'll talk to the postman if I need to. I mean, it just doesn't, you relax into it. And in the beginning, I think there's a certain amount of tension around seclusion. And I think for us, having done it that long, that I don't feel any of that anymore. It doesn't matter if someone comes to the door or whatever, and fine. But there does tend to be a certain amount of tension around developing the habit of seclusion that is self-defeating.
Everybody's a little different. I like not seeing anybody, not interacting, if I can help it, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Okay. Any other
What
thoughts?
else? Sir William.
Well, I guess one thought I have, or one question I have is, where would you seclude when you lived, where would you seclude when you lived at the village, and where would you seclude now? Like, do you make a conscious intention to go somewhere, or are you able to creatively use your space to
Well, at the village, we would go to the meditation retreat or Swami's Dome or the guest house over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When we got here, there was nothing, so I tried all sorts of things. There was a hotel out on the beach somewhere in Ocean Shores, way up the coast, that somebody mentioned. I went there for a couple of years running, and maybe not a couple, a week every couple of years. And I went to, what's that little town in Whidbey right over here?
Coopville? Langley?
Langley. I went to a hotel on the water at Langley one year.
Yeah.
It was a problem until we got this place and used it for seclusion. It's a bit of a challenge.
After we got this place, then it's just been
It was
here.
heaven.
Yeah.
But the point is, we like to get out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
When you're near your normal things and your chores, and it's almost impossible not to get distracted into those things. So getting away, and both of us like going where there's a there, so out in nature or here, someplace beautiful and quiet, and yeah, highly recommended. Home is a much bigger challenge to not fall into distraction.
How many of you have had a seclusion of, I don't know, more than 2 days? Oh, many of you. Oh, very good. Yeah, I know Lajana's been doing seclusions.
I did not see your hand go up, Pien. You're going to have to get one before this baby comes.
Yeah.
This is all over for years after that. Actually, Hriman and I started as soon as the babies were weaned. We started taking turns for a couple of nights at a time in the beginning, and more and more. It was really just a few years before we were back to a full week of seclusion.
Yeah.
It's really important, and that's one of the great benefits when a couple, when they're both on the path, is they can help each other in those ways.
But I'll admit that when I think of the local Sangha members we have, very few probably ever take seclusion. I don't know quite what it is at the village these days. Obviously much better, but I want to admit that it's not an easy thing to do for a lot of people to even want to take a seclusion. I remember when I worked at the Expanding Light long ago, 89 I think it was, I was shocked when I met a retreatant. She was a mom kind of person, and she said, I grew up in my parents' house, of course. I got married, so I was in my husband's house. I had children. She was, I don't know, I maybe in her 40s or 50s or something back then. And she said, I've never been alone, ever. And then I reflected, that's true of most people on the planet, 7 billion people. Most people are never alone, so especially in a lot of other cultures where families are larger and they all live together and TV's always on full bore and so forth. It's not easy for people to do. I think they're either afraid of it if they know about it, but can you think, I can even think of some of our core members who don't take seclusion. So it's not easy it's not for everyone, apparently. I mean,
But it is part of Ananda.
Yeah.
The Swami encouraged us, the tradition is for the different departments of Ananda to, one of the benefits is paid vacation and seclusion. And that means really using that for seclusion, not just for extra vacation. But the idea is to really encourage people to take seclusion, to try it. And, you don't have to have super high expectations or autisms, as Hriman likes to put it. You just have to start and just try working with it. Dambara, you've been at it a long time. Have you taken lots of seclusions?
Yeah. I try to do it every year.
Where do you go with your little RV?
No, I usually like to go to a cabin or something like that where I can spread things out.
Mm-hmm.
I must admit that I will often do project kind of seclusions, like musical Ananda projects or such, because it's a time to be able to focus on just one thing and not be distracted. Right. So I can't say that I've gone into as much depth meditating. I bow at your feet for doing that, and it's a great thing that I would aspire to. Yeah. But I like to keep spiritually busy in that way.
Karma yogi all the way.
Yes. It's just to say that whatever works, any seclusion's better than no seclusion.
Right.
And it's all directional.
Yes.
So just getting in the habit is the important thing, like meditation.
Yeah, we advise our newer members in training just to take a Saturday, just get a taste of what it is just to be alone with Divine Mother, with Master, and yourself. In other words, don't start with a week. That's absurd for most people. So,
unless it sounds glorious to you.
Yeah, I suppose. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Most people are scared to death, but yeah. Well, good.
Thank
Maybe
you.
someday Camino Island, since we're sort of living here now, this had been our seclusion house, but maybe someday we'll have a little seclusion cabin somewhere around here. Be nice.
Yeah.
Or just a yurt would be a good start.
Yeah.
On the farm.
A tiny house or something. Yeah.
Any other thoughts? She's in silence right now, but I know that Jana's here and she's a really good secluder. She loves her seclusions. So, yeah.
Padma and I went for about a year taking Thursdays in silence, but
it was hard.
It's
I mean,
hard.
work just intrudes itself constantly.
Yeah.
Speaking of intruding on seclusions.
We tried.
Yeah. Any other subjects? Any other thoughts, questions? Doesn't have to be on seclusion.
What was your favorite part of Spiritual Renewal Week? Favorite talk, favorite something, I don't know.
Well, I was telling you yesterday.
Come near this mic, please,
Oh my goodness.
Mr. Rick.
All right. I was saying that one of the things that I really treasured from this SOW was learning more about Swamiji. And it was really principally about your conversations and your presentations when you would talk about him. And I knew him. I heard him speak, and I've interacted with him a little bit. In fact, I interviewed him for 45 minutes down in LA about the joyful arts. That was a wonderful time. But I learned more about him, and he became more real and more full and a rich representation. And that was a wonderful gift to me, having been on the path 30 some odd years. So that was great.
Good, thank you. Anyone else?
I was impressed how, even though a lot of it was virtual, how well it worked. The concert was just kind of not an amalgamation, but it was just varied, and recordings, but live things here and there, small groups, large groups. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think the quality of the whole thing was what impressed me. It was just so well done.
Yes.
So it just creative spirit in the midst of any circumstance. Like here's the deck of cards. How can we make it beautiful? And everybody did really, really well.
How do we make lemonade out of this lemon, right?
What's the main difference for you guys speaking as a recording as opposed to have actual people, and what's been the biggest thing you've taken from those experiences? Is it all the same?
No, it's very different. I suppose there's a little bit more of a Shakti in presence, when you're, let's say, on a panel and a couple of hundred people there, there's some real energy there, which I think is, really wonderful. Recording it it doesn't have that Shakti, so it's not that it was like one is good and one is bad, but it was different in that way.
I know for me it's interesting. Of course, similarly, it's different when you're just talking to a camera than when you're speaking to a big room full of lots of souls who are supporting you. But I have to say, I remember saying to Hriman that for us, it was about a month before the event that we recorded and sent our recordings down there. And then it was, you could relax and you could enjoy spiritual renewing. And for those people who lived there and were speakers, I know what they were going through, because when your talk is upcoming, it's just on your mind the whole time. You know how it is when not everybody gives talks, but when you give talks, almost always afterwards, I think to myself, and I think most people do, oh, I forgot this point, and I forgot that point, And so you try to keep that in the net, right? And in this case, we were able to relax and enjoy the rest of the program. Whereas I knew Jyotish and Devi were prepping the night before, and Anandi and all the different speakers from down there. Our son-in-law hit it out of the park. Badri gave a beautiful talk, I thought. Yeah. And how about that farm video, guys? That was great. I got comments from people about that, emails from people about that. They appreciated it.
They did a lovely job with the kirtan, I thought.
Oh, yeah. That was astral.
Yeah.
The visuals for the kirtan were amazing. Did you all see that? That was
beautifully done. The music, too.
Oh, you should watch it if you didn't get to watch it.
Yeah.
That was my biggest challenge, was trying to keep up. Felt like by day 2 I was behind about 6 hours.
Yeah.
Then you're just kind of like picking random things at that point, trying to.
That's true.
That was because there was a lot.
Yeah.
That's true. But I have to say, they also, in addition, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't watched everything, it was done flawlessly. I expected, all sorts of issues with cameras and sound, all the junk that we go through, but I wasn't aware of anything. It just seemed very well done. So I'm proud and happy for the crew there that they pulled it off. Spiritual Renewal Week will never be the same, that's obvious. And I think a lot is lost, of course, we know that. But boy, when you think of all the people who can now participate without having to take a week off, airfare, car rental, etc., quite a. So I'm happy for the fact that we can expand it. I assume the day will return when we can also go there. But with this experience, it's going to be true everywhere. There's no going back 100%. So, it's change. So,
But I do look forward to going there for Spiritual Renewal Week in the summer and sitting in that cool temple and enjoying the program. I was looking forward to that for this year, and it didn't get to happen. So
Divine Mother
maybe next year.
pulled a fast one when they started having to go back to the Lotus Lake for their Sunday services.
I know. And they changed their service to 10 o'clock so that it would be cooler because
After all these years, I mean,
it's so hot there already. Yeah.
yeah.
And Davy called today and mentioned that Spiritual Renewal Week next year is going to be the last week of June, June 20th to 27th. That it doesn't need to keep encompassing the 4th of July because that was only for the 50th anniversary because that's our Ananda's anniversary. But so they're going to do it the last week of June to not have it hooked into 4th of July for the holidays and also to make it cooler for people. So that's nice.
It'll impact our solstice tradition. But we didn't do it this year. It's fine. But
Yeah. Who knows what will be happening by next year this time,
Yeah, don't know.
I mean, I think that's something we've all learned through this pandemic, that who could have ever imagined that we'd be going through this right now, and the resultant other social turmoil that's going on, good stuff in the sense of people really thinking more deeply about things and trying to be more conscious. And of course, Yogananda predicted that that would be the case as we come into this age of energy. But still, who would have imagined that it would have gone this way? So who knows what else is on the horizon, exactly.
But the farm is having a great season, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and the farmers markets.
Going great.
Yeah.
And we have so many people at the markets who want to come to the farm.
Is that right?
It's especially the last 2 weeks. It's like every third person is like, when can we come? So even this week we've made Wednesdays and Saturdays now from
Okay.
12 to 3 are open hours.
Wednesdays and Saturdays, 12 to 3.
Yeah, because we had to have an answer because
Yeah.
we needed to be
Yeah.
able to tell people something consistently.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, for the same reason, we started opening up the temple again Tuesday through Friday, 11 to 3.
Mm-hmm.
Just people do want to feel like they can come to their places of inspiration.
Yeah.
And that's important. So,
Yeah.
thank goodness. Yeah. Well,
Well, thank you, Sita, for the great questions.
got us going tonight.
Yeah.
And you have one more day of seclusion? Okay.
Okay.
Well, let's chant and meditate.
Let's.
Let's.
You want to chant? Oh, no, you can't chant. Right.
Haley.
Thank you.
Just because you're not in the hot seat doesn't mean you're not in the hot
I
seat.
know that. You never sniffed.
So let's meditate for just a few minutes. We'll take a micro-seclusion. Banish all stray thoughts in the one-pointed focus at the spiritual eye. With a subtle smile on the lips, the focus of the mind there and the heart open like a rose petal with a beautiful fragrance rising. Let us be still.
Close this program tonight, this satsang, with the affirmation to be a warrior of light that is being offered throughout Ananda's world these days. Please repeat after me. God's light is within me and around me.
God's light is within me and around me.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
With the love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light.
I am a warrior of light.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
To overcome fear with faith.
To overcome fear with faith.
Hatred with love.
Hatred with love.
And disease with health.
And disease with health.
We all are warriors of light.
We all are warriors of light.
We will fill the world with God's light.
We will fill the world with God's light.
God's light is within me and around me.
God's light is within me and around me.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
The sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
With the love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love. And disease with health. We all are warriors of light. We will fill the world with God's light. Now in a whisper, God's light is within me and around me. With the sword of faith in my hand. With the love of God in my heart. I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere. To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love. And disease with health. We all are warriors of light. We will fill the world with God's light. And now silently, mentally only, God's light is within me and around me. With the sword of faith in my hand, with the love of God in my heart, I am a warrior of light. I join my brothers and sisters everywhere to overcome fear with faith, hatred with love, and disease with health. We all are warriors of light. We will fill the world with God's light. Om Shanti. Thank you all for joining us. And this Sunday is our first in-person Sunday service again. We'll be following all the government's mandates with masks and 6-foot distancing, but you are welcome to come under those circumstances. And the doors and windows will be as open as possible to allow for fresh air and for us to be able to be together again in satsang with one another in person. So we hope to see you there. And
What time?
right, there'll be meditation at 9 and Sunday service at 10, the old schedule, the original schedule that we've had forever. And of course, Sunday service will be streamed live as always, in addition to being available in person. So lots of other offerings, both online mostly, a little bit in person, all available on our website. We hope to see you all at something in the next week or two. God bless.